Hello and welcome to the podcast Creatives Who Thrive. I'm your host, Deven Berryhill, and the vision behind this show is to interview creatives who are out there monetizing what they do in a way that helps them make more good art, whether it be music or filmmaking, painting, designing. But I'm really excited about our second guest here in episode 2. His name is Rob Smat. He's actually married to my wife's first cousin, but he also happens to be a great filmmaker. He is a graduate of the USC School of Film. He has come out with his first full feature-length film that's out on Netflix right now and Amazon Prime, and it's called The Last Whistle. It's a sports documentary with a very intriguing plot. But first, I want to tell you about a special guitar amplifier company called Risen Guitar Amps. There was a guy named Bob Rizzi who developed Risen amplifiers back in the 1960s. But before that, he worked for a guy named Leo Fender in Fullerton, California. Leo, along with Bob, George Fullerton, and many others, developed some of the more classic amps that we know today. When Leo Fender sold Fender guitars and amplifiers to CBS, Bob went to go work for Rickenbacker. He developed amps that even Led Zeppelin used on their first tour here in the United States. There's been many musicians that have played on the Risen amplifiers, including Joe Walsh, Slash from Guns N' Roses, Glenn Campbell, and now the Tourmalingers. We're excited that we're going to be coming out with this year in 2021 into 2022, the new Surfmaster. And check out their website. Go to risenamplifiers.com. Please welcome to the show, Rob Smat, everybody. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right on. Well, we were chatting a little bit before the show here, just kind of about dispelling the myth of the starving artist, if you will, especially in today's digital world where monetizing your creative efforts is a big deal. And there's many creative ways people are doing it. And you're someone who really, I think, has been quite effective in doing that. And I do want to talk about your new movie on Netflix, The Last Whistle, that came out in 2019, award-winning film, which is awesome. Congratulations for that. We want to talk about all that. We'll get to it and your future productions. But I want to hear your story a little bit. Give us kind of the Reader's Digest Rob Smat story.
Yeah, it's like any artist, I started out doing what I did and not realizing that it wasn't something that everybody did. I was the backyard camera guy. As an elementary schooler, growing up in Texas, we had a backyard that was probably half an acre, maybe an acre. And it was enough space to where I could, stage things and run around with my little brothers who were sort of the forced actors. And it wasn't so much about making things. It was more about, okay, now what happens if you stand here and you say this? What happens if you stand here and you say this? And I was blessed because, my parents supported it. And every year or two, I would outgrow whatever little dinky camera I was using. I think I started probably collecting new cameras in probably like 4th or 5th grade. I started off with my grandpa's straight to mini VHS camcorder, but the battery on that wouldn't last 5 minutes. So I learned how to work with an AD early on because that's how quick the battery would run out. I was used to being under the clock, but that wouldn't serve me for another 20 years, funnily enough. But just working my way up to digital cameras, and this is getting into the late 2000s now. So it's before smartphones had video. It's where you really still had to go elsewhere to find the digital video, but it's still after the era of film. Everything I've ever done is digital except for a project we'll talk about last year. But all digital. And so just really, I grew up with the digital video format. We really grew up together. And, by high school, by my time in high school, the phones could start videoing. And that got me into, having that knowledge and being able to use a Canon Rebel and my T2i, my DSLR. I started a high school film club. That gave me access to more actors, when we weren't, I was in the theater program because I love the artistic side, and there wasn't a lot of film. There weren't a lot of film studies programs in those days. But they did organize. I was in a private school that had a bunch of other arts organizations in it, and they organized like a film festival every year. And so I would go to that and I would watch what other creatives at the other high schools were doing. And the things that they would make and the equipment they had access to was incredible. And I hated it. I didn't hate it because they did a bad job. I didn't hate it because I was envious. I hated it because the stories just had no creativity whatsoever. And it made me furious because I really thought that, they didn't know, and I knew they didn't know, but I watched, other high schoolers that had this incredible access to cameras and sets, and of course in Dallas, I grew up in Fort Worth, so we were on the nicer side of town, the kinder side of town, the less frou-frou. But I won't go into Fort Worth versus Dallas. But anyway, it gave me this exposure to the idea that you can have all the money in the world, you can have all of the resources in the world, but if you don't make something that people like, what's the point? And I think that was the basis of everything that I went to at USC. I did USC Film School. I thought I would, I was salutatorian of a class of 100, so not necessarily a public school size class, but I made good grades, and I could have gone into physics. I could have gone into business, or I would have been a hell of a real estate agent. I still know I would have, if we were talking about it, I would be on, it would have been amazing. But no, I stuck to my guns. I did what I knew was the right thing to do for me as a person, for what I was called to do, even religiously. I thought that, I think that filmmaking is what I'm still called to do, even when I don't do it perfectly. And I took that to USC, and USC is the same thing. There's a lot of really impressive people at USC, and I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, some of the people with the most resources also turned out to be the laziest, and turned out to be the most entitled, and kind of knew that they had a spot. They kind of knew that they had a path forward. And I really knew little to no one in LA, little to no one in California. And I wasn't coming in with any connections. And so for the most part, besides what helped me get into school. And so it just went from there. And, but yeah, always just totally grew up with it, and didn't even realize it was something you go to college for until I was a sophomore or a freshman in high school.
Yeah, it's interesting what you just said about coming to LA and kind of, USC Film School. When you think of that, you're thinking, some of the top filmmakers in the world come out of there, right? So
they used to.
Yeah, there's a kind of a Hollywood kind of dynasty, if you will, of families. And
yeah, they call it like the mafia. It's the USC mafia. And USC is awesome. If you want to be an agent, it is, again, going back to not real estate, but talent, going to be a talent agent. USC is the best training you could possibly get to be a talent agent. But if you want to be a writer, if you want to be a director, it's interesting. A lot's changed about how we think about college, especially since I graduated. I got lucky to be there during pretty vibrant times.
Now, I know the theme of our show is more about somewhat the monetizing, but of creativity in a way that's healthy and productive. But I can't help but go back to part of your story where you're saying, hey, it doesn't matter the equipment necessarily if people connect with it on maybe a cerebral or a emotional, heartfelt level, particularly. You don't need all of that. That's not what's going to connect with people. And I think my own personal commentary is so many times you'll see this trailer for this, heavily CGI, trailer of all this bells and whistles. And it's like, I can't even name the film now. You see these things, and especially before movies, you go to the theater and they'll show you where you just be overwhelmed with sound effects and boom and this and that and flash. And you're like, I don't really know if there was a story in there.
I think everybody at film school wants to be the next Oscar winner. They really want those indie movies. They want to do like coming of age and like character and like Lady Bird, I think. And it's hard to do perfectly. And you have to have amazing A-class actors for that. And so I think I kind of realized how hard that was to really pull off and then to find an audience for. And so I personally, I love the action. I love the booms, the explosions and everything. But you're right. It's, like I just saw the most recent Godzilla movie. And even like Elon Musk tweeted, like the dialogue was just like the monsters and the robots and the, Godzilla was a way better written character than any of the human beings that were in the movie. I think that's endemic of our entire big budget blockbuster space is they've totally forgotten writing and character, and they just I feel like I'm watching somebody like do a PowerPoint of like how to create a human character. Give them a child, give them something that they care about. It's like I see that scene starting, and I'm like, okay, I know you're trying to get me to care about this person because you're just there's no craft here.
I come from music, and the same thing.
Uh-huh.
You can have the best studios in the world and the best sound and the best session musicians and the best players, best singer out front. But if you don't have a song, a well-written song, that takes you somewhere, then doesn't matter all that other stuff. That's just icing on the cake. It's not the cake, right? Mm-hmm. And the most important thing I saw in your bio here is that you're married to my wife's cousin, Kate, by the way.
That's correct.
I think
very importantly so. It's a greater accomplishment than anything we'll talk about today.
Well, my wife and I'll throw this in here just for fun. We're celebrating our first date today. 36 years ago, I married my prom date.
Yeah, my brother just took his girlfriend to prom, so I'll make sure to pass on the warning. But she's awesome. She's awesome. We wouldn't be unhappy. He would luck out. That would be good for him.
Anyway, you move on to film school, and then you transitioned into The Last Whistle from there.
That's
what
right.
happened transitioning from school? You graduate, you jump through the hoops there. You're obviously working with better equipment. You're starting to get in with more seasoned actors a bit, and so what was that transition from there, from USC Film School into your first kind of feature film?
It was hard, and it, I should invite Kate on the podcast. She can tell you how much, and the grueling, just like, what am I doing? Like, is this the right thing to do? Am I, where am I going? What's my path? And that was a hard time because I had worked so hard at USC, because I really, really wanted to graduate, knowing that I could write a feature film, or I could direct a feature film, or I could even just direct anything like web videos. I was fine with. I even got into virtual reality because there were no directors going into virtual reality. And I just wanted to be a filmmaker more than anything. And basically, so I left USC. I graduated in 2017. I had the Will Ferrell graduation speech, the famous, where he started singing and we all broke into tears. And I loved my time at USC, and it was a really tough transition because even in the second semester of my junior year, I took on a screenwriting minor in addition to my film studies major, because I could see the writing on the wall that I had done these internships, I'd done this and that, and every internship, I always kind of had that offer of like, well, if you want to come produce for us, if you want to come, be an assistant for a year and then work your way up, like, we can tell that you know what you're doing, and that doesn't always mean you're going to be great, but we'd love to take a chance on you. And my response was always like, I'm coming here to learn to produce and to learn to develop, because I want to be on the other end of that. I know that if I come and work for you, I'm going to be stuck as a producer. I'm going to be stuck on the business side of things, which I love. But I would always be working with people whose position I envied. And I think there are a lot of people who are agents, who are producers, who are all these other managers too, who I think always wanted to be the creative, and it kind of had to, it kind of decided to start off paying the bills, and it kind of got stuck there because they found success there, and there is a lot of success there. And I just knew that that's exactly what would happen to me, and it would take me another 10 years to either save up enough money or do this or do that to go and do what I really wanted to do. And so I really took a risk, and I really said, okay, I'm gonna keep writing. I'm gonna keep going to each of my connections. I'm going to go and try to make my own thing, because if I don't do this now, I don't think I'm going to get another shot at it. And so my senior year, I took a directing course, and I actually had to take it twice. I had to take it the fall semester and the spring semester, because at the end of it, the professor was awesome, and he had directed he directed Murphy Brown. He had directed just like TV show after TV show, and like in front of the whole class, it felt like something out of Whiplash, where he critiques everybody in front of everybody. Like there's no being soft about it. I've been in other USC classes where people turned in objectively terrible work, and the best thing that could have happened to them would have been the professor saying, "This is subpar. Here's what you need to if you want to graduate a true filmmaker." And they wouldn't. They would say, "Okay, well, you turned it in on time, and it has, and I can hear it, and I can see it, and it's artistic. So B+, A-," and that always kind of frustrated me, because it's not about it's not about the grade. It's about, this is supposed to be about being graduating filmmakers. That's what people come to USC for. Kids don't go to USC to become crew members, because crew members shouldn't require a college degree for the sake of crew members. Like if crew members have to start putting down student loans, the whole industry is doomed. And so you don't want that. You don't want to connect those two things for anybody's sake. But anyway, I took that directing class, and from the whole class, the professor just said, you've only regressed this entire semester. I feel like I've only untaught you what you thought directing was. And that was a really hard moment, because I felt the same way. And I was like, I know, I feel I'm sitting here at the end of this, everything I thought I knew, everything I've been doing since I was 6 years old, 7 years old now, and now I was 17, 18 at the time. Wow. It's just like, I just feel like all I did was unlearn. And so then that spring semester, I took the class again. I even went and took like a weekend long directing course they were offering for students for like a heavy discount. And for me, I just have a very analytic brain, and I needed to hear the same thing from two different people, I guess. And then it clicked for me. And then after that, it was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't know where else I could go as a director. And now it's like I can watch something, I can diagnose what to do with it, I can diagnose what the issue is, and I can just like, I can make it better, and I can let the actor make it better. I don't have to. I can let them do it. I don't need to tell. It was just such an epiphany when it finally started to click for me. Mm-hmm. And so then I graduated, and I actually I started working at IMAX VR. I was one of their, like, I toured people. I was kind of the technicians were very, calculated, and I was sort of the more human conduit between, I knew the tech side, but not well enough to be doing it. And I knew the sort of investor corporate side, but not well enough that I wanted to be on the corporate side, because, I knew I was probably going to, move away with my fiance/wife at some point and start a family. And so I knew I didn't really want to get trapped anywhere, because I would have to disappear. And so that was a hard time, because it really was devoid of the writing and the directing. And I even tried, I said, you guys need videos. Let me try to, like, do some instructional videos as you invest in the company. And I was constantly trying to work my way up. And in the end, it came out to, it's just like, that's the world now. There's no more upward mobility for people who are on the bottom rung of any company. And they really, and it wasn't that they wanted it to be that way. It wasn't that they actively suppressed me. It was just like, well, this is nice. Here's, what they call like achievers points, here's some coupons, and thank you for your service. And I was like, okay, at least I tried. So then at that point, I was antsy. I was writing as much as I could. I was trying to get projects off the ground. And that's when I was just, I had a project fall apart right when I graduated. I thought I had an investor for it. I thought I had a production company that would help produce it. And then the investor went AWOL, and I kind of had to start from scratch. I got to pitch the project. I had great, it really gave me that little boost I needed before graduation, where it's like, okay, even if this falls apart, I'm in good shape. But at that point, I got approached because I had I'd applied for and got into a fellowship, and there was an application for the Rebel Without a Crew TV show that ended up being on El Rey, which is kind of like Project Greenlight, where they give you a certain amount of money, they film you with reality cameras, and you go and you make a movie. And it's like, oh no, are they going to finish on time? Or like, oh no, their actor just got hurt. What's going to happen next? The kind of drama that only I really appreciate, and like filmmakers, right. Like Project Greenlight, season 1, it was like, ooh, Matt Damon's going to help like this newbie like make a movie. It's going to be exciting. And by season 5, it's like, okay, they're still making movies, and Matt Damon doesn't really care. Like Ben Affleck isn't even there anymore. It's
right. Right.
So this was a spinoff, and it was Robert Rodriguez. It was, Diablo Entertainment. It was, he was working on Alita Battle Angel, and here he is like mentoring filmmakers on how to go and do what he did, way back in the day when he made El Mariachi. And kind of funny because he kind of doesn't realize either how hard it is to go and have that start that he had way back when. I think he even decided to go and make another movie for $5,000 and he couldn't do it. And I think that was kind of a wake up. It was a wake up call that nobody listened to, but I saw it and I was like, oh. But anyway, I applied for the show. That was the beginning of The Last Whistle, actually, and I got rejected from the show. They said we were trying to meet a quota in the kind of people that we cast and the kind of people we put on the show. And so I totally, independent of the quality of the project and the quality of the filmmaker, they were just casting based on appearance and can't do anything about that. And at that point I said, I'm just going to go make it. I'm going to try to find as much money as I can to go and invest into it. And then I'm going to try to turn it into a business model. And that was so that whole journey took me about 6 months from graduating to finding that new opportunity.
Again, though, it sounds like you just kept punching at it, though. You just kept believing in the writer director track, as opposed to, like you said, kind of going into the producer side, which would have taken you into more of the kind of business guy, admin, accounting almost, instead of where your real passion was at. You knew yourself well enough, and a combination of not only knowing yourself, but also seeing cues from the industry.
That's right.
You were able to put those two things together and make those work for you.
Well, so, and I passionately more than anything wanted to find like a niche, something that nobody else was doing or something that few other people were doing. And that was kind of what I found with staying with features, with staying with feature length, hour and a half long. Everybody was going into TV. Everybody wanted to write the next House of Cards. Everybody wanted to direct the next Orange is the New Black. And I looked at it and I saw like sort of that was the surge. And I was like, nobody wants to do movies anymore because they're either huge for the studios or they're small for the indies. And I was like, I would love to stay in movies. I think that there's a lot of room. And we've kind of seen that now that the streamers are starting to make. The streamers kind of adopted a TV movie and they kind of added a little bit of art to it. They kind of are allowed to break the mold of what would be a traditional TV movie on Lifetime or BET. You don't have to stick to what the channel likes. You can go on Netflix, you can direct any drama or any genre, and there's a lot more freedom there. So I just, again, wanted to go where I could do what I wanted to do.
That's fantastic, Rob. And so you started on The Last Whistle, and did you go first or did the financing come later? I mean, where did that line happen where obviously you started hiring actors? I mean, you had to have the equipment, the location, the production costs. How did that all kind of
I kind of pieced together what I knew that we would need. I started with, obviously I knew I could do it if I was just carrying around a camera and doing El Mariachi style. I knew that I could do it for that cheaply, and all I need is location and an actor at that point. And I think in the end, it really grew to a much bigger and much more professional project than what I had originally imagined for it. And that was such a blessing. And
what was that? Was that the actors? What was the thing that boosted it to that more professional project?
It was belief in the project. It was people kind of seeing that we had momentum behind it and wanting to be a part of it. And
that was through a script. Like you'd pass out a script?
It was a script. It was who we had already brought onto the project. We were building. It's kind of like it's essentially like building a startup. It's like. We had someone who had done it before. We had someone who people knew about. We had the white paper, the script underneath all of it. We had me at the center of it. I was a good salesperson. I was good at talking to people. And it's just like we just kept building and building, and it wasn't an overnight thing because we started totally from scratch. And I even what I did was I went back to my high school and I asked them, hey, there's a week. I remember, from going here. There's a week between when kids get out of school and when the summer programs start. And if I can just bring in a crew of 15 people for those 5 days and we'll pay security and we'll have insurance that'll cover the location and we'll even pay for the location. Can we use the high school? Can we use the facilities? And I played football there, and we'd won a state championship. And so the coach, the principal, everybody said, yeah, we'll make this work for you. We appreciate you thinking of us. And so that was the first yes that I needed, because I knew that we would have to have that school environment. And I knew that we were going to have to target it at a time where we weren't going to inconvenience them in any way, because that we didn't have the pull to do it. So once I had that, then I said, okay, let's see if we can raise $50,000. That was my goal. And so we just kind of started to go out and ask people and talk to people. And I think it was 4 months after we initially sat down, the producers and I sat down and had a conversation, and where we got our first 25% of the investment from a local businessman who works in tech, works in all sorts of things. And he was kind, and he sat down with me, and he moved me through the school, and just an incredible start. And so, and I think an interesting part of getting it started was, and I thought I had this working against me. I thought this was something that was my issue, but I think everybody realized I was a year out of college. And so I think everybody realized that I had no money whatsoever to be investing in a project myself, more so than my time and my, not going straight into a career. And so I think people saw that, and there's sort of that naivete, innocence, brand newness to it, to where I'm not gonna steal from anybody. I'm not here to screw anybody over. I'm not here to take investment that I wouldn't be investing myself. I'm just, I'm sitting here with pennies in my bank account. I wanna try to create a new business model on the back of this movie, not just go and make art. I want to actually try to make money for you, the investor. And that pitch sold us on enough people at enough, of a price that we were able to gather what ended up being $100,000 to make.
That's the gold, I think, right there in this interview. I mean, we haven't finished it yet, but to me,
that's good. We're out of here. We're out of
here. No, I love how you went back to your community, Fort Worth, your high school, your tribe, your people who trust you, who know you. You got a local business guy. To me, that is so key right there. And for our listeners, maybe you're listening out there, there's this concept, I got to go to Hollywood to make it, or I got to go to Nashville to make it in the music business, or go to New York. Rob went back to his home, to his high school. I mean, it's, we have this kind of, rock star mentality. We got to be on the big, in order to make it, we got to be out there. Okay. You went to USC school. Okay. USC film school. That's pretty.
And I learned a lot there. I definitely, fish out of water. I did learn a lot, but it wasn't the location to start. You're right.
You had mentors who were real with you. So that's key. Having someone, putting yourself underneath somebody else who knew and was willing to tell you the truth. And that's what kicked you into gear to maybe go to that extra film directing weekend or whatever you had there. So it forced you to do the extra. It forced you to really dig deep and go, okay, who am I? What am I really about? Yeah, I've been making films in my backyard since I've been 6 or 8 years old. But let's face it, I want to go big screen someday with this, right? That's probably your dream. Hey, I want to make the movie, right? People go to the theaters and they experience the movie. I want to make that. And in order to do that, though, the path has been through your high school. And there's a humility to that. And that's of note for our audience, I think, here is there's a humility that you had, Rob, to go back and go, I'm not going to pick the school and, hey, let's get to, the LA Coliseum. We got to do it somewhere big. We want a big picture and we want to see something, LA doesn't have a football. Well, you have the Chargers now. Sorry.
Everybody go and listen to Bolted. Bolted is a podcast that one of my film school friends made, and it's great. It is a true crime series, but it's all about how San Diego lost the Chargers. Spotify, Apple Music, it's on everything. Bolted. Bolted is the podcast. Plug my friend's podcast. San Diego fan.
Bolted. Yeah, I'm here in San Diego. You're in Phoenix area.
I'm part-time San Diego.
Crying. I love that. And then, so you got the local school who knew you, and you're like the hometown kid, that went out and went to the big school, and you're coming back. And I love that whole concept. I mean, we were talking about how much we like the band U2, and we were talking about the Joshua Tree tour. And I've read up a lot of books, as you can see right there. In my
books behind me.
I have a whole line of, well, that's U2, 1, 2, 3. I have about 5 or 6 books. But one of the best things about their story is that when they kind of made it big, they went back into their hometown of Dublin and invested. They went back to their people. They went back to their tribe. And instead of, like, woo, check us out. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to, we're going to invest in Vegas or something, or LA or Hollywood or whatever. Not that they didn't have those connections, but they went back and they bought hotels in their hometown and gave people jobs. They always were like, we're a band from Dublin. We're about our people, our tribe, the Irish, and that was endearing to Americans, because how many Irish are in America, right? Mm-hmm. But it was kind of like, hey, you know what? We're not forgetting who we are. This is who we are. That's who we are. We're from Dublin. We're U2. We're just guys from the streets of, the bad side of town of Dublin, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so kind of similar to your story, Rob. I really appreciate that, you sharing that. And I hope our listeners could kind of take from that is that.
And there were a number of times I needed a favor from somebody, or I needed to film somewhere that I couldn't afford at the top rate, and where there was, there were just so many times where I needed something, or it could even film school, like college friends, where I needed somebody's help with a technical issue or something on the editing side that that they would know how to do. And there were so many times that I needed help from somebody, and it was someone who I had interacted with before, and I had been nice to, not because I was suited to gain from them, not because I knew that they could help me someday, but I was nice to them just because I try to be nice to everybody. And I think if I had not had that level of connection with them, I wouldn't have been able to organize. I would have been able to, there were so many times where I interacted with someone who I could have very easily written off years ago. I could have very easily met once and forgotten about, or not been nice. I could have, just been like everybody else is, normal with them and not. But because I kept connections with people, because I was nice to people when they remembered good first impressions, there were so many things that I was blessed with because of just investing in relationships that you think are worthless. And they end up being very valuable.
So key, and I would call you still a young guy.
Yeah,
a few years older than you. But I can't stress that, even in my own experience too. It's like how many times there was that clutch moment where the budget wouldn't allow for it, or there was a timing thing, or there was you just needed a favor. You just needed help. You didn't even know what you needed. And you were able to go, I get by with a little help from my friends, kind of thing, Those things come through with relationships, going back to your tribe and your people, doing it with them.
And it's hard because it's you almost like I've almost at times started to think about myself like a stock ticker, and that's how Hollywood works with people. Hollywood only wants people who are like, mooning, Bitcoin, GameStop. They want people that are at the top. They want to, and so it's that makes sense. But I had a lot of professors and people I worked for at these companies who I busted my butt for, and they treat me like a penny stock. They don't return my emails. They don't, and that's fine because I email them too much. I'm asking too many questions. I don't really need to be bugging them as much as I do. But it's the people who are willing to invest their time in me, I think, that keeps me going. And those people have become fewer and far between in terms of people I interacted with and learned from at USC. And I think that's been one of the hardest things. Is there are people that I really, professors and producers who I know I could perform for and get and just do an awesome job for, and they only want to chase whatever the most popular thing is, and I know that the second that I get any sort of notoriety, I get any sort of write up about me, they'll be calling and they'll say, hey friend, how you all the time, and it's just like it's hard because I'm they won't show up in the next couple of years in between. And I could have that tomorrow with their help, but that's not the way it goes. That's not the way it goes for artists here. And that's an accept that.
You're building your brand, your personal brand. Correct. On integrity, on character, on
doesn't go as far as it used to, but trying to, yeah.
Yeah, but that's long term. See, the thing about creatives that's different from maybe the fly by night, they're looking for the quick buck, the quick movie, the quick release, is you'll never know who they are later.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
True creatives can't not create. I heard Dave Grohl talk about that from Foo Fighters. It's like in one of his, he's dabbled in the movie industry, obviously, in the last 5 or 10 years or whatever, and finding his voice in that. And the theme that I keep getting is that, true songwriters, true musicians, true filmmakers, true writers, painters, they paint because that's their way to connect with the real world around them. Yeah. That's their voice.
You can't not do it.
Yeah. For me, it was the guitar, I picked up the guitar at 8 years old and went, ow, that hurts my fingers, right? Like most people pick up a guitar, but it wasn't until I'm in 4th grade in my show and tell class where I played Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. And, all of a sudden I got 15 girls want to know my name. I'm like, what? I connected somehow with the right crowd. I do really want to get into The Last Whistle, a little bit of the story. I was reading some of the reviews. You had a review in Variety magazine. I was like, wow, that's awesome, man. They weren't easy on you, and they were talking about the topic. Tell us about the storyline briefly, the kind of the tension there.
Yeah, I grew up playing football, and there were always, there's always accidents that happen in any sport. But the one that I saw happening all the time were kids collapsing and just dying on the court, on the field, on the ice. Not a lot of ice skating in Texas. I'm sure it's happened. That happened in the NHL at some point. And I was just like, this is weird, and nobody ever knows what's going on. And so I thought that was. It wasn't like, oh, I can solve this, or I can raise money for this, or I can cure this. It was like, this is scary. And this is something that we don't normally see in like a football movie. And the combination of those two things, I think that makes a compelling story. And it's one that I can tell on a lower budget.
So in the story, the main character is this coach who's pretty driven. He's got an opportunity to go from high school coaching maybe to college, just a kind of an authoritarian type guy who's just in it to, now he's at the place in his life where he's just kind of grinding on the team pretty hard, and something happens. One of his favorite players has a pre-existing heart condition that no one knows about.
Right.
And tell us what happens there.
Yeah, he's and it's interesting because I wrote that coach character imagining him to be in his late 30s and his late 40s. And I think that, Brad is in his mid 50s. And even that difference of, 10 years, 5 years makes a big difference because it does kind of give you this idea of, he is living in the result of how he's lived his life. Whereas if you're still in your 30s and 40s, you might be able to live a certain way and not experience the repercussions of that. I think that there's a certain age where the way that you live your life does start to catch up with you. Right? Maybe your spouse leaves you, or you have something terrible happen, and you start to realize, oh wait, maybe I'm the reason for this. I feel like there are a lot of movies where that's the case. But I really love the dimension that Brad brought to that part. And so, so that's his thing. It's coach. He's big on winning. He's long time divorce, just hitting the pavement. Football is his life. And he ends up, the players step out of line. They're late to practice. He runs them, and one of them collapses, and he's dead within 5-10 minutes before the paramedics get there. And it's and then his whole everything is just thrown into disarray. And basically, he decides, well, we can't, we're not able to forfeit our next game because, the other school has a scheduling conflict, so they can't lose a game, and I can't lose. And I think we got to keep playing it. And so that it's almost that decision. It's not the player collapsing; it's him deciding to play the next game that gets him like suspended, and really is the nail in the coffin for him too. And then, of course, throughout the movie, you kind of see him realize that there's more to life than winning.
I find it interesting that the movie's placed in Fort Worth. You're from Fort Worth. You film it at your high school. You're kind of you played football. A lot of personal connections there. Did that is some of this your story a little bit?
No, and I think that was something I cleared with my original football coach early on. Is like, hey, I know that people like go back and love to make movies like bashing their relationship with their father and bashing their relationship with their coach, and like Whiplash, and bashing their relationship with their instructor. But this isn't that. Yeah. This isn't you. Obviously not. And he was like, I don't care. You're great. I know you're great. I'm not worried about it. And I think that was what I really enjoyed, is that all of the good parts of my high school football, all of that experience make it into the movie, but all of the bad parts, all the negative things that happen in the movie are not sourced from that experience. And I think that if I could go back and do it again, if I could go back and add some more scenes or anything, it's like, man, I more stuff with the players. It's the, a lot of the stuff between the players is a lot of my personal experience. A lot of the stuff with the coach is, a written character. I haven't lived to, I'm not that age. I haven't been, divorced or had anybody under my care collapse. And so that really was, I had to study to write that role, but the football players, that was very innate, and I should have done more of that. I should have had more of that. So,
yeah. In fact, one of the reviews was talking about how you balanced that nicely. And Variety says at the end, the movie ends precisely when it should. Is the end of the review.
And that was actually, I sent an early clip of the movie. And if anybody gets the DVD, you can see the deleted scenes on the DVD. There's 5 more minutes of the movie actually after that point, or 3 more minutes. And I had somebody watch it and they said, I think the ending is right here. And, when you're sitting there looking at the timeline, it's like, wait, so I would cut off this much at the end of the movie. But I feel like Thanos sometimes, where I'm like, if it doesn't work, get rid of it. If it doesn't work, get rid of it. And, before he was removed from Hollywood for good reason, Harvey Weinstein was called Harvey Scissorhands, because he would, cut up this international artistic movie and do it his way. And that's not good either. But I think that there's some element as an artist where you don't want to delete anything. You don't want to get rid of anything. I think that's what separates the very best from, not saying that I'm that, but I think that they're the very best artists are the ones who listen to feedback and don't get too attached to their art that they can't remove the parts of it that don't work before the finished product.
Well, I know in the music business, the executive producers kind of play that role versus the director, where they're able to kind of come in on even another tier above and kind of think, globally,
Right.
Long term, they can see the market. We have just a couple minutes left here. I did want to talk to you about, what's going on now? This walkout on Walmart that you're doing. Oh, this one about GameStop that you're doing, the nonfiction. You're writing a book for that. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you real quick is about TikTok. And I found this interesting. And I've met your puppy Chewy.
That's right.
But for you, as a filmmaker, you're dabbling in that. What do you think of that whole medium, and how does that work in your world?
So I got into it just because it almost takes me back to 15 years ago when I was chasing my brothers around with cameras in the backyard. And it's like, I just pick out, I'm picking out all the usable footage of this adorable puppy, and, I can put it to music, I can cut it together, and I can make whatever I want with it. And it's very freeing in a way, because it allows me to get back to the part of the craft that I love so much, which is just like, let's make it, let's put it out, let's see who likes it. And it's funny because people like very different things from what you expect them to, and it feels like, I almost feel like the studio, it's like it's Chewbacca, it's Chewy Smat Video Studios or whatever. And but it has been incredibly useful for a number of different reasons. If I ever fail as an artist and need to go get a real job, I can go and make TikToks for a corporation or for a company that needs marketing, because I've got this resume, this page that's my resume. Number 2, if it does get really successful, and it's been great so far, I'm comparing her page to the other newer, dog pages, and the TikTok algorithm is really interesting. it will boost you without having to spend a penny of ad dollars if you do it right. And so she's been up on the site now for 5 weeks or 6 weeks, and she's got like 2,000 followers, and she's and a week ago she only had, or 2 weeks ago she only had 500. So the past like 2 weeks, especially, her the page's growth has really started to take off, and I think I figured out the right blend of making a video, having it go semi-viral, get 5,000 views, 10,000 views, not huge for TikTok, where you're talking about 1 million views per video, but 5,000, 10,000 is not chump change, and it's the kind of thing that you get if you have 100,000 followers. You get 100,000 followers, you're going to have 1,000 of those people watch that video, but with only 2,000, you really have to make quality content that the algorithm will bump up to people that are not your followers, and then you can use that to get new followers. And so I'm just playing that game right now. And that's, number two, if it takes off, then that's another form of monetization. It's something else that I can, sort of establish and invest in. And, you talk about investing in yourself, I'm, buying clothes for the dog and dressing the dog up and letting people, comment on that and have fun with that. And then in the end, if I'm ever lucky enough to make another movie, get her to promote the movie, and if she's got thousands of followers, that can be huge. That's incredible to have an advocate like that on the social media side of things. So it's been a lot of fun, and then I guess 3 or 4. The important thing is, and the kind of the scary thing is, TikTok is so young. The users on TikTok are 10 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old. And then, of course, teenagers and adults, too. But especially the ones that like puppy videos, they're young. And I don't think it's appropriate for kids that young to be on the site. But, there's nothing you can do about parents that are trying to get a break from their kids, bugging them and not wanting to read books or do their homework. And it's huge because it really is the next generation, and it's what they're going to be watching. And I know that if I can get into their heads in terms of the content they like to watch, everybody in town is going to want to make that. And that's what Netflix is doing right now. Netflix wants anything with like teenagers and, like sex, drugs, and, like they love Stranger Things. They love, the kissing booth. They love, they love these like teen things because they want subscribers in that base. They don't want people over 30 to subscribe because we're all going to die in 30 years. They want people that are going to live for 100 years, that are going to be with them forever. And I think that sort of Silicon Valley sort of growth is what I'm trying to learn through TikTok, and it feels very unartistic. It feels very outside my range and what I like doing, but I'm still doing the other stuff alongside it, so it's not taking over totally.
I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm studying. Someone's used one of my band, the Tourmaliners, our song "Island in the Sun."
Uh-huh.
And if you go on TikTok, type in Tourmaliners, and there's been a couple other songs that have had 20 videos.
I used one of them.
Oh, right on. The top ones have 1, 2. I think there might be a 3 million now.
It's awesome.
Viewed, with hundreds of thousands of likes on each video. Uh-huh. Some of them. And I'm trying to figure out what that all really means for us as a band. I mean, I'll put that in our bio. Like you said, one, it kind of gives you some kind of credibility in another medium, a crossover, like in terms of monetization. So interesting times we're living in.
Yeah, I would keep on it because there's just such a huge connection now between TikTok's most viral songs and the Billboard Top 100. And, it's like surf rock hasn't hit the Billboard Top 100 in maybe ever, maybe since it was first hit the mainstream.
55 years.
That's right. But you'd
my
be
dad
shocked
did it with Wipeout.
That's right. So I think that it's kind of funny where the more stuff you can put out and you just get one song, you get 5 seconds of one song that's like, da 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 da, just like act 1, act 2, act 3 within 6 seconds. And if the right person finds it, if the algorithm, it's like you have this, like you have it's a slot machine and you hit the jackpot. And if that goes viral on TikTok, then you go viral in on the Billboard in real life. It's the same way it works for the music. So there's there's so many musicians on TikTok, and you've already had much more success than they have. you could write a whole song and be like, this would do really well on TikTok. I think someone can make something out of this. And then they'll pick up the one that's, oh no, we wrote that because we liked how it sounded. It's
right. I have no idea why they picked our song. It's not even our song. It's a cover of Weezer's song.
Right.
But it's got that similar, we do the intro just like the Weezer. Maybe it's sped up a little bit and it's got a little surf sound to it. But I ask all of our guests, and I'm going to continue to ask this. If you were to go back to the younger Rob, maybe the teenage Rob, and say, give him a little piece of advice from what you know now about not only filmmaking, but just life, what would that be?
Given that there are a lot of things I would do differently, knowing, I would buy $100 of Bitcoin and then I have enough money to make as many movies as I ever wanted to. That's the silly answer. But I think I do pretty firmly believe in the path that I took. And I think that there were a couple of opportunities where I really could have taken a bigger chance or worked for somebody that would have boosted me as a creative and done incredible things. But instead I chose to date Kate, and I chose to, spend time with Kate and even leave LA for Kate. And so I think, now that we're married and it's like, that was the right thing to do. And if she had dumped me and run away, then maybe I would have gone back in time and said, don't get your heart broken. But because this, because my new family has worked out so well, I think that I think I did it right, even though sometimes it feels like I can't get the script. I can't get everybody to read the script. I can't get a response from this person or whatever because I didn't work for them long enough. It's like, but as you know, every day is a good day, and that's the most important thing.
You did well marrying Kate. She's a wonderful.
I got very lucky.
I was blessed enough to go to your wedding, and I see that you're even doing a documentary called The Wedding March about my struggle to get married under California COVID restrictions.
Yeah, and I can discuss that real quick. That's
sure, go ahead.
I was so impressed with our wedding. But yeah, you mentioned I'm doing a documentary on Walmart. I think I'm going to try to do that one for $15,000 to $25,000. I think I can make a documentary that cheaply. And it's about a friend of mine who did this whole corporate protest, and just a cool story. Not anything anybody's going to know about, not anything that's going to win an Oscar, but just a cool story that is worth investing a little bit of money into. And then I wrote a GameStop book because I was there when it all happened, when it all started. I'm still there. I still think that something's going to happen with it, even though everybody else kind of left it.
That's the GameStop stock price soar and all that.
That's right. And as we speak today on the 26th, they just released some numbers, and right now there are way fewer physical shares of the company than what everybody thought there were available. And so you talk about everything that everybody thought was going to happen when Robinhood shut down trading, which is we're going to do this short squeeze, we're going to run them up. That failed because they but I think now there's sort of this resurgent thing, but only the Reddit groups have figured it out, or that they believe in it at least. Yeah. That there could still be an opportunity for what they originally set out to do. And the people that are buying hundreds of that stock, and I'm holding on to my 2 or 3 of it. But anyway, the wedding march is it is about our wedding planner for our San Diego wedding. We had it in August 2020, as you know. We had it outdoors. No one got COVID. No one got sick. Nothing terrible happened. We were able to celebrate with 50 or 60, 70 people. And as we were planning the wedding, our wedding planner just kept going back saying, well, now we just hired a lobbyist, and now we are working with Gavin Newsom, and now we are trying to get the San Diego City Council to approve this and approve that.
Your wedding got all the way to Gavin Newsom, the governor? The planner?
Indirectly, in a sense. It wasn't our specific, because we didn't want that. We didn't want anybody to know about that we were getting married, because you never know. Somebody somewhere could just say, no, you're not. And it's over. And it's done. And so we were trying to stay under the radar. She was kind of fighting on behalf of her business as a wedding planner.
I see.
So in a way, yes, but mostly no, and for good reason. But I called into a city council meeting in San Diego and talked about our struggle and what we were trying to do, and the wedding planner helped me go through that, and we won the vote. We managed to get the city council to adjudicate in our favor, but it's all she wanted. All our wedding planner wanted was guidance. She just wanted events to be included in the tiered reopening system. And the state of California said, no, we don't have to, we don't want to, we have no interest in doing it. We're not even thinking about it. Because it sounds like a concert and we can't do a concert. It's like, no, it's not the same thing. There are people hurting, there are photographers, caterers, all these groups that are not able to make ends meet. And it's just the story of her struggle. It's the story of our wedding in a sense when she was battling on the city level. But once we had our wedding, she took the fight to the state, and they stonewalled her at every opportunity, and she fought them for a year. And I think now that now they've had the recall vote, kind of convinced Newsom that maybe he did some things a little too much. And, it seems like he's probably going to win that. So it's not like we're not advocating for or against the recall in any way. But just talking about like the struggle of a small business owner, and the interaction between government and small business, the size of government and whether it needs to be bigger or smaller, and just a very like nonpartisan COVID documentary that's not about the death and destruction, just one that's kind of about like, okay, here's kind of like a and here's kind of, I shouldn't say fun, but here's kind of a quirky story in the whole mix of it. Because they end up dressing up in wedding gowns and tuxedos and they march on the Capitol and they have a whole day of protest and with like 100 people and in the end it saved the businesses, and we're watching as it happens. So I'm developing that for the next 8 weeks with the Moving Picture Institute, and at the end of that workshop they'll pick 2 or 3 to invest probably $250,000-$500,000 to go and produce as movies.
What's the name of the institute? Sorry.
It's kind of the NPI, Moving Picture Institute.
Nice.
And they're based in DC. They were growing out of like a think tank or something. They're a very atypical production company. And that's why it's been fun to work with them, because they really don't have people that are just wanting to break into the industry, knock on their doors. They really, and I think that this is the one thing I really wanted to say this whole time, which is everything I've ever done, and the important thing, what separates starving artists from successful artists, I think, and I wouldn't call myself like monetarily hugely successful at this point, but I know how to get there, and it's all about having an audience. It's whatever you do, just make sure it's for someone, and especially when you use the internet, you can find that niche. You can get to those people much easier than you ever could before. And I think the most damaging thing you can do as an artist starting out is try to make something for everybody, because when it's for everybody, no one's going to take a chance on it because they already have what they're looking for. And audience. That's the most important thing, and that's my favorite part of any movie is sharing it with an audience for the first time. That is my favorite part. It's not sitting in the director's chair. It's not getting to be in charge. It's not even watching it play in the editing bay for the first time. Probably my second favorite part is watching this magic of scenes like create a story, which is just still boggles me. It's getting to watch someone else look at what you've done and judge it for better or worse.
Yeah. I love how just even in the wedding march documentary that you're making is from your own personal experience. Again, you're just sharing. You have an eye. You see, as a creative, you see something, just like with The Last Whistle. It's like you're seeing there's some kind of injustice happening in the world in sports. There's some kind of there's a concept of some kind that's being propagated, and it needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed, really. And same thing here. It's like there's something that you're seeing. You're just going along with your day and your life and trying to plan a wedding, and just like anybody else plans a wedding, right? You weren't. But then through the process, you're like, this is kind of different. This is there's something.
And it was hard. Our wedding planner, very modest. She does amazing work. Her name is Amy Okatikin. She runs First Come Love's Wedding. She's a San Diego-based wedding planner. She runs the Best Coast Beer Festival too. So she is San Diego through and through. And she would say things like, I'm talking to our lobbyist, so let's schedule after that. And I would just pick up on it, and I would say, you're doing something crazy here, and no one knows. And you would never tell anyone if you didn't have to. And I'm going to make you tell somebody, because this is this is a great story, and it's not going to be a politically divisive one either. As you know, as creatives, you have to measure the amount of yourself that you put in the project, because if you put too little of yourself in the project, it's going to be the explosions and it's going to be plastic. There's no human connection there. But if you put yourself too much in the project, it's just Barbara Streisand. You're just, on the screen, it's all about you, and only Barbara Streisand can accomplish that. And you are not. No one cares about me sitting behind the camera.
Right.
I'm not. So I'm not a Star is Born. So, but that's the hard. And again, that's new artists. New artists. I want to do a movie about growing up in Biloxi, Alabama, and working in a diner. And one time somebody said something mean to me, and it made me realize I could be an electrician. And it's like, I'm sure that sounds like a great story. I'm sure that's your life story. I'm sure it was very formative for you. But all I hear is I, me.
Right.
And that's not something that most people can pull off. And if you do, you have to do it in a selfless way that involves other people, because you cannot be the writer, the director, the filmmaker, the actor, the producer, the gaffer,
the story.
You can't be all of it. You have to let other people in your story, and the more people you do, usually the better.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Rob, thank you so much. I mean, you've shared, we could go on and on, I'm sure, for days. You've done so much. You're doing so much. I wish the best for you. For those watching, again, you'll have to, I went to look for The Last Whistle on Netflix this morning, and I didn't see it was there, but I did see it's on Prime.
That's right. So The Last Whistle is just about everywhere you can find it, except I think the Netflix expired. The license ended yesterday. And so they kind of ebb and flow with their licenses. So they come back to Netflix soon. We're not sure. But it's everywhere else right now as of April 26th.
I've seen the film. Actually, I saw the initial cut you brought to us before release, which was cool. I felt very privileged to see that.
There are some slight differences for sure.
Yeah, and then watching it later on Netflix at home and kind of experiencing it like everybody else, that was cool too, to kind of get that. But such a great time talking with you, Rob, and I just enjoy your demeanor, your approach to the whole thing, and I know our listeners, people watching this, will pick up some of your cues and some of the experience. So thank you so much for being here on Creatives Who Thrive, because you are definitely a creative who thrives. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me, and everybody go find my dog. It's she's on TikTok at Chewy the Desert Doodle. So
there you go.
Follow TikTok dog. That's where you can do it.
Right on. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.